So, for those of you who are new at this point, we take some time just to reflect on our relationship to what it is that we're actually experiencing. And these few words that I'm going to share are really just an opportunity to contemplate. So, in our meditation practice, which we've just been engaging in, we're aiming to allow ourselves into a space where we can contemplate beingness, our existence, our true essential nature. But just because we've finished our formal practice and we have our eyes open and you're engaging with the sound of my voice, your essential nature remains. It's still there. And so the words that are being spoken now point towards that. So we use them as a way of contemplating, reflecting. There's no definitive answer in what's going to be said. The words are just a way of keeping us on track, but more to the point, keeping us contemplating, reflecting, attuned to our essential nature. Now, this is the meeting for September. September is an interesting month. It has all the appearances of being like January. Insofar as in January, we have the beginning of the year, and people make great efforts to set their intentions, their plans for the upcoming year. But September, in its own right, does the very same thing. It doesn't get the same hype, the festive fanfare, but it gets an equal amount of energy. For those of you who have kids, you'll know this with your kids finishing their summer holidays and starting school. And then for everyone generally, there's a sense of the summer coming to a close. This time of year, we see people being offered through advertising and promotional campaigns opportunities to take up new courses, different paths of study. And even I remember when I was in school, this was a time of year when different magazines or different sources of entertainment started to refresh and restart the new season. I've been involved in education for many years, and so September within the Northern Hemisphere is the beginning of the new academic year. And the academic year is a point when there's a certain frustration because all the fun and games have to come to an end. And I suppose this is more when we're in our youth. But for those who are in later in their lives and pursuing academia, there's a determination. Whatever the ending of the previous year was, there's a determination to pick yourselves up, refresh, recharged, and ready to move on with enthusiasm, apply oneself. And something similar happens in these monthly meetings where people will join and perhaps after every meeting feel a certain amount of inspiration, enthusiasm, willingness to pick themselves up and apply themselves to their practice. So we have different points throughout the year when this is more obvious, such as the new year, now here in September. Perhaps when we end a retreat, we can feel the same kind of inspiration. But we can also get this inspiration just from listening to a talk on our way to work, or from reading a few pages before we go to bed at night. And there's these points that help us to recharge, but also just to realign us with where we're intending to put our attention. And our attention, we're intending to align it or to focus it on the contemplation of our essential nature. The challenge for us in this is to know exactly how to go about the practice. Referring back to education, you'll remember from your days, on the first day back, there's usually an assembly or some kind of calling together of all the students, and there's a certain pep talk or an induction on what the year is going to mean for the students of that year, how important it is, the significance of it, how they need to go about it, what they need to take into consideration, all of these things. And as practitioners, whether it be in the path of yoga or whatever spiritual tradition it might be, but as practitioners aiming to understand, appreciate, and awaken to the truth of reality, our absolute essential nature. How do we go about getting this kind of guidance? Who's going to give us the induction? It's quite easy for students beginning their first term to measure out what needs to be done. There's so many months in the year, there's so many weeks, so many holidays, so many tests, so many exams, so many subjects. Everything is so measurable, quantifiable. But here now, as practitioners, aiming to enhance and develop our skill as practitioners, aiming to experience and awaken to their essential nature. What is it that can be measured? What is it that can be communicated to help us to feel or get a sense that we're moving in the right direction? As practitioners, due to this lack of definable process or definable steps within a process, we can find ourselves experiencing a great deal of doubt, uncertainty. Now, when I say that there's a lack of steps in the process, there are steps, there is a procedure, there is a path laid out. The challenge that faces us as practitioners is our own particular experience of life. And so the model or the framework which is given to us in and of itself sets an idea of what's to be experienced, what's going to unfold, and how long it might take. But the reason it remains abstract is because we have to apply ourselves to it. And we are currently, each one of us participating in this meeting, experiencing the world in a very singular, particular way. And so everything that is being shared with us within the tradition of yoga, within the tradition of kriya yoga, we have to assimilate and make sense of in regard to our own experience of life. And so we can experience a great deal of doubt, uncertainty. Is what we're doing right? Is how we're interpreting the teachings correct? Are we making progress at all? And really what this comes down to then is an understanding of the entangled, extremely nuanced experience of living life as conscious awareness expressing through a human mind-body system. Awareness is unchanging. It's unaffected by what's going on. It's a constant. Awareness is a constant. It perceives the endless now. It perceives the moment and the following moment and the moment that is always now. But our characters, that expression through which awareness is facilitated, is given the opportunity to know itself. That character, that person that we are, it has accumulated memories throughout its life up until now. It's come so far. Memories which are more clear-cut, memories less clear-cut, memories which are accurate, memories which are not so accurate, fabrications, fantasy, delusion, hopes, dreams. All of this fits into our person. But all of these have been accumulating and building one on the other from the very moment we were born into this world. But we didn't choose any of it, so to speak. We were born in, and from our initial moments, awareness was pure. There was nothing really there. But then it starts to take on the impressions, and they accumulate one on the other. And before we know it, before we're even fully formed as individuals, we're making decisions based on these impressions. A lot of this now is outside of our conscious awareness. It's unconscious. But yet, it is all still at play. And we have, throughout the decades of our lives, been building on this. But we didn't choose. Those initial choices weren't ours. We didn't choose where we were going to live, what country we were going to be born into, or who our parents were. We didn't choose what kind of family we would have. All these things we were born into. Now, there might be an aspect of your thinking right now which is going towards karma and the idea that there was a certain tendency that you'd accumulated that would allow you to be born into these circumstances. And this is okay to toy around with. But when things become extremely abstract, when things become outside of our capacity to take the reins on, to take hold of, we can find ourselves becoming more ungrounded. And so I'm pointing to the idea that as individuals, that is, as people, personalities, characters, what has been part of our formation, the different variables that have been part of our formation, a great deal of them we did not choose, but they've been hugely influential in how we went about developing our character. So now, as practitioners, what does it mean to be a practitioner? What does it mean to be one who's endeavoring to experience their essential nature? Well, fundamentally, we're endeavoring to go beyond all phenomena, all that conditioning, all that we've accumulated, all that we have used to give structure to the concept of I or me, the person, which has been fabricated as a consequence of this accumulation of experience, each one influencing the next, each one influencing how decisions were made and how we responded and reacted. And in turn, these led on to further decisions being made and further reactions. And the whole thing, the whole drama of it, has informed and brought about our sense of who we are as a character, as a personality, as a conceptualized image of ourselves. So then when we meet new people or when we're in a gathering, we have to describe ourselves, we will refer to these things, these different aspects, these different variables, which are part and parcel of our sense of who we are as a character, as a personality. We refer to our jobs, where we live, our family background, the culture we're from, all of these things. But these are all phenomena. And insofar as you may talk about it in one way, the person sitting next to you may talk about it in another way. And someone across the other side of the world will talk about it in another way. And so there's a great amount of possibility. And this is the beauty of life as it expresses. But the essential nature is unchanging and is not reliant on this phenomena, not reliant on these variables. And here I am talking, and you're listening, and you're hearing words. But each and every word that I use has been fabricated, created through the very same mechanism, the same system. The words I use have been formed through our social living. And so they embody a certain concept, each and every one of them. And all of these concepts can be interpreted in slightly different or nuanced ways depending on our previous experience. So I'm using these words, which are phenomena. The words themselves are phenomena. So I'm using phenomena in an effort to point towards that which is beyond phenomenon. Everything comes a little bit tricky. And so, as practitioners, when we see ourselves in those moments when we feel inspired and enthusiastic to reapply ourselves, to really take our practice seriously. And so we become so enthused that we sign up for a retreat, or we endeavor to sign up to a course of study, or perhaps we buy a new book. We do all these things, but all of these things are phenomena. And they're all part and parcel of the play of life. So we're looking for answers. What's the answer we're looking for? We're looking to know who we are. And so, as it's being described here, our essential nature is our true existence. It's what we fundamentally are. And I'm using words: essential nature, true self, pure awareness. Words. I'm using phenomena to describe something which is beyond words. So we'll go about looking for sources which will help us to move towards that experience, if we can even say it's an experience. It's the reality. It's the reality of who we are, which has become clouded over because of an identification with the fabrication or the constructed person that we have come to know this world through and as. Here I am as David, speaking with these words that have been given to me, and now I use, with a teaching which has been shared with me, and now I share. But as practitioners, aiming to go beyond phenomena, it's our responsibility then to acknowledge that these sources that we refer to have their place and they have their benefit. But the responsibility fundamentally lies with us. It's up to us to be able to see. Now I'm using the word us. I could say it's up to you to be able to see. But then I use the word you. And who am I referring to? Because your character, your personality, the different variables which you use to consolidate and construct that image of who you are that you can share with people. That's not what can see. That's not what can interpret beyond phenomena. That which can perceive what's beyond phenomena is beyond phenomena itself. And that which prevents us from being able to see what's beyond phenomena is phenomena. So here we are, and I'm using words, phenomena, talking to you about what it means to be a practitioner. I've acknowledged that source material is good, it's helpful, supportive, but it in itself is still phenomena. So how do we know how to be a practitioner? How do we assess our own capacity as a practitioner? Who are you as a practitioner? What defines you? And I suppose the definition really comes down to the action. A practitioner is defined by what they're practicing. But then, does it mean that you're a practitioner because what you're practicing is reading books, talking about the beyond the phenomena, attending multiple retreats in a year? Is this what defines the practitioner? Are these the actions? So if the practitioner is defined by the practices that they engage in, and all of the practices are in and of themselves phenomenal, engaging with the phenomena, then that can't be what is being practiced. So the practitioner is defined by the practice. So what is it? What is the practice? What's the activity that's being done which allows one to be called a practitioner? And that activity is contemplating essential nature, seeing it, facing it, confronting it, being with it, consistently, continuously. All effort is being driven towards that practice. So if you read a book, it's with that in mind. If you listen to a talk, it's with that in mind. If you go to a retreat, it's with that in mind. So really, the onus on a practitioner is to face reality, to really face reality, to look at reality. Because it's only when reality is truly being given discernible and accurate investigation. It's only when reality has been truly looked at, investigated, that its truth can be seen, that the phenomena, the change, the continuous change, begins to reveal its source. Facing reality, this could be considered, in a more grounded way, the practice. So a practitioner might then be defined as someone who goes about the practice of facing reality, really acknowledging reality. Now, that might all seem so grounded that there's a certain possibility that it might be misinterpreted. But when we look at reality, of course, we can see it physical, the world around us. But in our meditation practice, just there, towards the end, I encouraged you to notice what was going on in your mind, what the thoughts were producing. So reality isn't just the physical, it's also the emotions and the thinking processes. And we need to face these. These are aspects of reality. These are expressive aspects of reality. Now, facing them means that we're not suppressing them. And this is where there can be a tendency to be very active as a practitioner, very keen, very enthusiastic, be reading books, keeping journals, meditating twice daily, attending talks or listening to talks, all of these things. But what's being experienced at a subtle level is not being acknowledged, not being faced. And so there's a sense of being a practitioner, but it's the kind of practitioner who is avoiding reality or the full expression of reality as they are experiencing it through their own particular experience, the singularity of their experience. So being a practitioner, if it's to be one who is truly determined to experience one's essential nature, everything has to be acknowledged. So those aspects of who we are, of the personality, they have formed themselves, they have accumulated, they've become habitual patterns of behavior in certain ways, and we may not like them. And we may wish them to be different. But what's important is that they be looked at, faced up to, seen. And so as practitioners, you may have heard it being said that you know if somebody is emotionally and spiritually mature when you can see in their life how reality is expressing in a harmonious, somewhat harmonious way, and their life is one which is devoid of too much upset, drama. You may have heard this being said. But we can understand if we take this notion that facing up to reality, acknowledging reality, regardless of how subtle it might be or how easy it might be for us to turn our back on. This allows us then to be with it, despite its discomfort, despite its not necessarily being in favor with our own preferences, but we can be with it, we can see it. It is reality as it's expressing. Doing otherwise is going to cause upset. It's going to cause a counter effect within our own psyche, upsetting our own internal processes, emotional, mental. And these are going to have consequences in how we behave. So as practitioners, as we reflect on what it means to be a practitioner, we can ask ourselves if there might be any ways that we are using our spiritual practices, our formal spiritual practices, as a way to avoid facing up to reality, to give ourselves the impression that we're all in when the opposite might be true. So as practitioners, our activity that defines us as practitioners is contemplating our true essential nature, the truth of reality for us. And that reality which we experience is one as both pure awareness, but the only way we know this pure awareness and can really cognize it is through the faculty of the mind-body system. But if the mind-body system is being denied, refuted, ignored, then we can see and understand how this may get in the way of our being able to know and realize, awaken to our essential nature. So these are just words to guide our reflecting on what it means to be a practitioner.